So the Surface Go is one of the most anticipated 2-in-1s of the year, and a lot of it is because of the price. We're talking about $399 to start, although it does get expensive with the accessories, and we'll get into that.
Quite a bit.
This is Mark Spoonhour with Tom's Guide.
And I'm Andrew Friedman with Tom's Hardware.
And I think one of the most interesting things to start with is the fact that we gave this same device 2 different ratings on 2 different sites. So on Laptop Mag, which is part of Tom's Guide, we gave the Surface Go 3.5 stars. And Andrew, what'd you give yours?
And on Tom's Hardware, we gave it an 8 out of 10, so slightly like half a point higher rating adjusted.
Okay. What I'm impressed with so far is the display quality in our review.
The screen has, as all the Surface devices do, it's got a 3:2 aspect ratio. I think as a tablet, that's excellent because it just if you do get the $99 stylus, it is just much more natural. It's like using paper or a book.
Right.
So I really like that. I think more productivity laptops should have it in general. So I'm really in favor of that.
I also like the fact that you get the built-in kickstand just as you do with the Surface Pro. So this, in a lot of ways, this is a mini Surface Pro, which is great because you get the same magnesium build quality, right? So it feels sturdy, it feels premium.
Especially for the price.
Yeah, so starting at $399, and it's super light, so it's 1.15 pounds before you add the keyboard, and even when you do, it's less than 2 pounds.
Well, we have 2 different keyboards here, which I think we should point out. So the keyboard doesn't come in the package, so you have to buy that separately. You have the polyurethane keyboard there. That's that's about $100. This is the Alcantara, the luxurious Alcantara keyboard. That starts at $130 in 3 different colors. I like the keyboard.
Yeah.
It's not a great lappable design. The Surface Pro has never been a great lappable design, and the keys are pretty shallow. Like there's not a lot of travel, but I think they're really clicky. I think it has a really tactile feel.
Right.
And while the keys are a little close together for my taste, there's something there's less than a millimeter of space in there. It was something I could get used to, and I was able to type really well on it. What did you think of that one?
I like the fact that it's backlit.
Yes.
I do like that there's a little bit of travel, more so than there is on the butterfly keyboard for the MacBook Pro, and that's amazing given the fact that it's really just a cover.
Yeah.
So take note, Apple, on that. And I think the other thing that's underrated, especially when you compare it not just against the iPad, but also the Samsung that's coming out, is the fact that you get a touchpad built in.
Right.
And that's completely underrated when it comes to using a tablet as a laptop.
Absolutely. And it's a Windows Precision touchpad, so it just works perfectly with all the drivers. It's just, again, something you often don't get on a cheap laptop that runs Windows from a Windows partner.
Yeah, and just in terms of the typing experience, I got about 70 words per minute, which is close to my average, but I got about 85% accuracy, and I'm usually closer to 95%. And to your point, a lot of it is because the keys are closer together, so there is a learning curve.
Yeah, and the other thing, and I didn't have much of an issue with this, though some people I showed it to definitely noted, is that this top row, they definitely shrunk it down.
Yeah.
So your function keys, your brightness, your volume, you have to get used to the fact that they are little tiny chiclets, but it works. It's backlit, which is really nice. So,
well, let's talk about the configurations and performance, because that's the other difference between the systems that we have. So I have the entry-level model, which starts at $399, and for that you get a Pentium processor, 4 gigs of RAM, and 64 gigs of storage.
64 gigabytes of EMMC storage, and that's a big part of the difference, where we here have it looks exactly the same, but it's the 549 with the same Pentium processor, goes up to 8 gigabytes of RAM and a 128 gigabyte solid state drive.
Right.
In terms of benchmarks, I mean, I saw the benchmarks on laptop. Processor performance largely the same.
Right.
The 8 gigabytes, will allow you to open up a lot more tabs in Chrome, things like that. So depending on how much productivity you want here, that's probably a pretty big deal.
Right.
And the SSD storage is just a lot faster than the eMMC storage.
Yeah, it was the difference between like 70 or 80 megabytes per second.
It's faster, it's more reliable, and you get more of it.
Right.
Though the thing about storage for either of them is that under the kickstand, there is a micro SD card slot. So if you need more space on either one, you can get it.
Right, but the reason why I would probably go for the 549 config is because you get more storage out of the box, and even though you can add more via micro SD, Microsoft itself has said to us that if you're running apps off of flash memory, it's better if it's an internal storage as opposed to, I guess if it's like photos or videos, it's different.
Yeah, we had it was a little less than 20 tabs open. We started noticing a little more latency than usual, and was also streaming a 1080p video from YouTube. And so if I was using this, I could see using this on a plane. I'm doing one thing. I'm focusing on it. I'm writing I'm writing a review. I'm writing an article. And maybe I need a couple tabs open for reference.
Right.
I'm not sure I could see using this as like my everyday. Like this isn't going to replace your desktop or your your work laptop as it is. But for a single-minded task, I could see it working out pretty well.
Well, let's talk about one of my biggest cons, and I think it is for you too. Well. It's battery life. And so on our battery test, where we simulate web surfing over 150 nits of brightness, we got just a little over 6 hours.
Right.
And like the typical budget laptop is much longer than that, over an hour and a half longer.
Right.
And the typical tablet, and this is not your typical tablet, but just
Right.
to be fair, gets closer to 10 hours. And the iPad, which the 9.7 inch was also closer to 10 hours.
It's an issue for me because this is called the Surface Go. It's
Right.
not the Surface Stay In and Charger. It's not the Surface Stay In and Charger tablet.
Right.
So it would really be nice to see them put in a larger battery. I think the next iteration of this next year, that's the #1 wish I have, is get this thing to 8 hours. I mean, on the bright side, it is a small power brick. And another small bright side, which I actually didn't mention while we were on the positives, but is that this has USB Type-C now. So if you don't want to lug that power brick around, maybe your phone's power brick will be able to give you enough power to top off a little bit. But yeah, it is a shame that it couldn't hit that like 8-hour minimum we consider a workday.
Which I think overall, if I were to compare this against the iPad, I might still give the edge to this over the iPad because of what you're getting for the money.
Right.
You know, full Windows.
So it's Windows 10 Home on the consumer one. If you if they sell this to a school or a business, they'll have Windows 10 Pro, and you can revert it to S mode.
Right, and Windows is just a lot more versatile. You get to download and use all the apps that you're used to using, like Chrome.
Right.
It's not quite as good as an iPad. I love the fact that there's a built-in touchpad. The
Right.
keyboard is a little bit better. You know, the Surface Pen versus the Apple Pencil, like I love the fact that you don't necessarily need to, you know, you can just attach it to the side like that. Just like little touches like that.
Yeah, the Surface Pen also, I mean, it hasn't changed much, but the fact that you have a button that you can use to call up the ink space, or the fact that you can use the back as an eraser, or little touches that Apple hasn't caught up to yet. So I do really love the Surface Pen for that.
So bottom line, if someone just came to you and said, like,
Right.
should I get the Surface Go? What would you say?
On Tom's Hardware, we recommended this for 2 people. Because we see these people, a lot of people who read our site, they have a desktop or a powerful laptop. I say for 1 or 2 people. A, if you want a cheap laptop, you don't have a lot to spend, maybe you'll get that model, or if you have a little more, you might get this model. You want it with some of the best build quality in the business. This
Right.
doesn't feel like a Fisher-Price toy the way a lot of sub-$500 notebooks feel.
Yep.
So that's one way to do it. And the other way is if you need a secondary device. If you're going to be away from your big desktop or your big hulking workstation,
Right.
then this is something you should seriously consider. Because while the iPad is great, and iOS 11 did a lot to, you know, adding in and drag and drop and splitting screens, it doesn't have the intricacies of Windows. So if you need that every day for your projects, the Surface Go is really just an obvious recommendation.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, for me, the bottom line is I think it's good for a couple different types of people. One is business travelers or commuters, or people who want a secondary PC, so just to stay connected. You don't need the full power of, like, let's say like a MacBook Pro or something like that when you're on the go. And also students. I think it is a decent choice and an alternative to Chromebooks.
Yeah.
Even when you add in the keyboard, I don't think it's too expensive, given the fact that there are a lot more premium Chromebooks coming out right now that are in the same ballpark, especially those that are 2-in-1s.
Right.
So make sure you go to Laptop Mag as well as Tom's Hardware for our full reviews for the Surface Go. For Tom's Guide and Laptop Mag, this is Mark Spoonhour.
Andrew Friedman.